The empress slapped her own daughter across the face in front of 300 nobles, and not a single one of them flinched. I did. That small movement, a human's instinctive recoil at cruelty, was enough to draw every eye in the crystalline throne room toward me. The Terran ambassador seems disturbed, the empress said, her voice carrying the peculiar resonance of the Valorian vocal cords, designed by evolution to command. Perhaps he finds our customs distasteful. I stood at the back of the hall, with the other minor diplomatic attachés, representatives of species too new or too insignificant to merit seats. Earth had joined the Galactic Compact only 18 months ago. We were tolerated, barely. Princess Kaelith remained where she had fallen, one knee on the mirror-smooth floor, her silver blood visible at the corner of her mouth. She did not rise. She did not weep. She simply waited. "Your radiance," I said, and the words left my mouth before wisdom could stop them. I meant no offense. I was merely startled. The empress tasted the word like something rotten. By discipline, by the strength of her highness's composure. The silence that followed was absolute. Valorians did not compliment the disgraced. It simply wasn't done. Princess Kaelith had committed the unforgivable sin of refusing to bond with the prince her mother had selected, a political alliance worth 12 star systems. For 3 years now, she had been publicly shamed at every court function, a living reminder of what defiance cost. The empress's 4 eyes narrowed. "You find composure in cowardice, human. I find courage in choosing one's own path, your radiance, even when that path leads through fire." A murmur rippled through the nobles. Several of the Valorian lords touched their throat ridges, a gesture of contempt I had learned to recognize. But the empress merely smiled, and that smile was far more frightening than her anger. "How primitive," she said. "Ambassador Vance, isn't it? The one who lost his colony ship? The one who watched his family burn in the void while he floated helpless in an escape pod?" The words hit me like physical blows. She had done her research. Of course, she had. "Yes, your radiance," I said quietly. "Then you understand shame intimately. How fitting that you would defend my daughter." She gestured dismissively. "The audience is concluded. Kaelith, you will escort the human ambassador to his quarters. It seems you have found a kindred spirit in disgrace." Princess Kaelith rose with fluid grace, her face betraying nothing. She walked toward me, and the crowd parted before her, as if her touch might contaminate them. When she reached me, she inclined her head, the barest acknowledgement protocol allowed. "Ambassador," she said, "if you will follow me." We walked in silence through corridors of living crystal that sang softly as we passed. The palace was grown, not built, and it responded to the emotional states of those within it. Near the princess, the crystal hummed a low, mournful tone. "You should not have spoken," she said finally, without looking at me. "Probably not. My mother will make you suffer for it. She collects grievances the way other rulers collect territories. I've suffered before." She stopped walking. For the first time, she truly looked at me, not through me, not past me, but at me. Her eyes were the deep violet of dying stars, and in them I saw something I recognized, the exhaustion of someone who had been fighting alone for far too long. "Why did you speak?" she asked. "There was nothing to gain. Your species is barely tolerated here. You have no power, no allies, no leverage. Why risk what little standing you have for me?" I thought about the question. I thought about Sarah and Michael, about the last transmission I'd received from our colony ship before the reactor failed. My wife's voice, calm even then, telling our son that Daddy would find them. I thought about the 18 months since, about the hollow performance of diplomacy while something inside me slowly calcified into stone. "Because someone should have," I said. "Because 300 people watched you bleed, and none of them moved. Because I remember what it feels like to be alone in the dark, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone." She stared at me for a long moment. Then, impossibly, the corner of her mouth twitched. "You are either very brave, or very foolish, Ambassador Vance. In my experience, the two are often indistinguishable." The summons came 3 days later. I was to serve as Princess Kaelith's official liaison to the Terran delegation for the duration of the Compact Summit. The Empress's message was brief and coldly formal, but its meaning was clear. She was testing me. Testing both of us. "She wants me to break you," Kaelith said, when we met in the delegation's modest quarters. She stood by the window, watching the 3 suns of the Valorian homeworld trace their complex dance across the sky. "She believes that forcing me to interact with a human, a species many here consider barely sentient, will humiliate me further. And she believes that my presence will taint your delegation's credibility, will it?" She turned. "Does it matter to you?" "Not particularly. Why not?" I set down the trade proposals I had been pretending to review. "Because humanity's credibility in this compact was never going to be built on avoiding controversy. We're too new, too different. If we succeed, it will be because we proved ourselves useful, not because we were polite. A pragmatic philosophy. A realistic one. She moved away from the window, examining the sparse furnishings of my quarters, with an expression I couldn't quite read. Your species fascinates me, Ambassador Dart. You have no natural weapons, no exceptional senses, no biological advantages whatsoever. You come from a single world at the edge of charted space. And yet you speak to empresses as if you were their equal. Perhaps because we haven't learned yet that we're supposed to be inferior. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, perhaps, or the beginning of respect. And what have you learned in your 18 months among us? That power is often performance. That ritual can be a prison. That the strongest chains are the ones we accept willingly. She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. The prince I was supposed to bond with, Lord Kaelith. Do you know why I refused? I assumed it was political. Everyone assumes that. She sat across from me, more casual than protocol permitted, and I realized that in the privacy of these quarters, she was allowing herself to be something other than the disgraced princess. He was kind enough, in his way, handsome by our standards. The alliance would have strengthened both our houses. My mother was right, it was an excellent match. Then why? Because when I looked at him, I felt nothing. Her violet eyes met mine. Among my people, a bonding is meant to last centuries. We are long-lived, Ambassador. The thought of spending 400 years beside someone who stirred nothing in me. At she soul. I simply couldn't. That doesn't sound like cowardice to me. To my mother, it was the ultimate selfishness. To the court, it was proof that I was defective, too emotional, too human, they sometimes whisper. She laughed bitterly. I have never even met a human before you. And yet somehow I became tainted by your species before our first contact. Ironic, isn't it? What do they mean by it? Too human? That I feel too much? That I allow sentiment to override duty? That I am, she searched for the word, soft. I leaned forward. Your Highness, in the 18 months since my family died, I have met perhaps 1,000 sentient beings across a dozen species. Diplomats, merchants, soldiers, scholars. Do you know how many of them looked at me, truly looked at me, and saw a person rather than a representative of my species? She was silent. 3, I said. A Korvathi freighter captain who shared his liquor with me after a trade negotiation. An elderly SF philosopher who asked about human music. And you, 3 days ago, when you asked why I spoke, I was asking a practical question. No. You were asking why anyone would care about you. I held her gaze. That's not softness, Your Highness. That's isolation. I recognize it, because I feel it too. The crystal walls around us shifted their tone, moving from mournful to something more complex, a harmony that seemed to hold both sorrow and the first fragile notes of something warmer. Kaelith looked away, and I saw her compose herself, reassemble the armor she wore in public. But before she did, I caught a glimpse of what lay beneath, not weakness, but depth. Not deficiency, but an abundance that her cold culture didn't know how to hold. We should discuss the summit agenda, she said finally. There are 12 factions vying for influence, and you will need to understand the dynamics if Earth is to navigate them successfully. Of course, Your Highness. She began to explain the political landscape, the rivalry between the Valorian houses, the ambitions of the Korvathi merchant princes, the ancient grievances of the SS enclaves. She was brilliant, I realized, her mind sharp and subtle, seeing patterns and possibilities that would have taken me months to grasp. Oh. And as she spoke, something shifted between us. Not romance, not yet, but the foundation of something rarer, genuine understanding. Two broken people, finding in each other a recognition that neither had expected. The assassination attempt came during the 3rd week of the summit. We were in the Eastern Gallery, reviewing the proposed trade modifications, when the lights died. In the absolute darkness that followed, I heard the distinctive whisper of a Valorian blade being drawn. Kaelith. I started. Down. She tackled me as the blade sang through the air where my head had been. We hit the floor together, her body covering mine, a reversal of what any Valorian would expect, the royal protecting the commoner. The emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in crimson. 3 figures in traditional assassin's garb surrounded us. I saw Kaelith's face above me, saw the calculation in her eyes as she assessed the situation. They're here for you, she breathed. My mother's final test. If I save you, she can claim I've chosen a human over my people. If I let you die, then you pass her test and lose yourself. I understood immediately. Save yourself, Your Highness. I'm just a diplomat from a minor species. Earth will send another. She looked at me then with an expression I couldn't name, fury and grief and something fiercer than both. No, she said. She rose like a storm, and I learned in the next 30 seconds that Valorian princesses were trained for war. She moved through the assassins with brutal efficiency, her ceremonial blade, the one I hadn't even known she carried, singing its death song in the crimson light. When it was over, she stood among the fallen, silver blood on her hands that was not her own. Her breathing was steady, but I saw the fine tremor in her fingers as she sheathed her blade. Why? I asked, climbing to my feet. Your mother will use this against you. You know she will, because you were right, Ambassador. She met my eyes, and her voice broke on the words. Because someone should. Because I am so tired of being alone in the dark. Guards arrived moments later, too late, as was certainly intended. Among them was Lord Deathor, the Empress's chief advisor, his face a mask of false concern. Your Highness! Ambassador! We heard the disturbance. You heard it, Kaelith said flatly, and yet you arrived only now. How unfortunate. Deathor's expression flickered. The princess is surely distressed. These were clearly enemies of the state, attempting to disrupt the summit by targeting our Terran guests. They were targeting me. I stepped forward, and Princess Kaelith saved my life at great risk to herself and her standing. I will be including a full account of her heroism in my report to Earth's compact delegation. The words hung in the air. A formal diplomatic acknowledgement changed things. If Earth, insignificant Earth, officially recognized Kaelith's actions as heroic, it created a record that couldn't be easily erased or rewritten. Deathor's mask slipped, for just a moment, revealing cold calculation beneath. Then he bowed. Of course, the Empress will be informed. After he left, Kaelith turned to me. In the aftermath of violence, with the adrenaline fading, she looked younger than I had ever seen her. Younger and infinitely tired. You shouldn't have done that, she said. You've made yourself a target now, a real one. I was already a target the moment I spoke in that throne room. Why? The question seemed torn from her. Why do you keep doing this? What am I to you? A project? A cause? A way to redeem whatever guilt you carry about your family. The accusation should have stung. Instead, I recognized it for what it was, the desperation of someone who had been used so many times that she couldn't recognize genuine care. You're my friend, I said simply. Or something that might become friendship, if we survive long enough, and friends don't abandon each other to bleed alone. She stared at me. The crystal walls around us sang with a frequency I'd never heard before, a high, sweet tone that seemed to shimmer with something almost like hope. I don't... She stopped. Her hands were shaking harder now, the delayed reaction setting in. I don't know how to do this. I've never had, no one has ever. I took her hands. It was improper. It was presumptuous. Among her people, it was a declaration of intent that I had no right to make. Her fingers closed around mine like a drowning woman grasping a lifeline. Then we'll learn together, I said. Both of us. Because I don't know how to do this either. But I know I don't want to face another 400 years alone. You don't have 400 years. No. I have maybe 60, if I'm lucky. Which means I can't afford to waste a single one of them pretending not to feel what I feel. The tears that fell from her violet eyes were silver, like her blood. I reached up, slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed one from her cheek. She leaned into my touch with a sound that was almost a sob. My mother will destroy you, she whispered. She will destroy us both. Let her try. The summit's closing ceremony was held in the Grand Resonance Chamber, where the crystal walls amplified every whisper and emotion into a symphony of sound. Every major faction was present. Every observer was watching. The Empress had saved her final move for this moment. Before we conclude, she announced, her voice filling the chamber like a bell, there is a matter of concern that must be addressed. It has come to the court's attention that the Terran ambassador has overstepped his bounds. That he has taken inappropriate interest in a member of the imperial family. That he has, in essence, attempted to manipulate the Empire's greatest shame for his species' political advantage. A murmur swept through the assembly. I felt the weight of 1,000 stares, but I did not look away from the Empress. Therefore, she continued, I call upon Ambassador Vance to answer for his conduct. Let him explain, before this assembly, why Earth should not be expelled from the compact for this interference. This was her trap, then. Whatever I said she would use against me. Against Kaelith. Against Earth. I rose from my place among the minor delegates and walked toward the center of the chamber. The crystal floor sang beneath my feet, broadcasting my emotional state to everyone present, and I let it. I had nothing to hide. Your Radiance, I said, I have no defense to offer. The Empress smiled triumphantly. Then you admit, because I have committed no offense. Her smile froze. I spoke in your throne room because I witnessed cruelty and remained silent once before, when my wife and son died, and I was too far away to help them. I will not make that mistake again. I accepted this liaison because your daughter is the most brilliant political mind I have encountered in this compact. I defended her from assassins, because that is what decent beings do. I turned to address the assembly directly. You call her your greatest shame. I call her the bravest woman I've ever met. The crystal walls erupted with harmonic complexity. Shock, scandal, but beneath it, something else. Something that sounded almost like the stirring of conscience. You speak of her defiance as weakness, I continued. But she defied not merely a political match, she defied a system that treats love as transaction and duty as the extinction of self. She stood alone for 3 years, in a court that shunned her, under a mother who humiliated her, and she never broke. She never bent. She never betrayed who she truly was. I looked at Kaelith then. She stood near the front, where the disgraced were made to stand, and her face was wet with silver tears. On Earth we have a saying, courage is not the absence of fear. It is being afraid and choosing to act anyway. Princess Kaelith has shown more courage in her quiet resistance than most warriors show in battle. And if seeing that, recognizing that, honoring that, if that is a crime, then yes, I am guilty. The Empress rose from her throne, fury radiating from her like heat. You dare, I dare because I have nothing left to lose. I met her eyes, without flinching. You speak of shame, your radiance, but the only shame I see in this chamber is the shame of a civilization that punishes love and rewards cruelty. Earth may be small, we may be new, but we know something your empire has forgotten, that the measure of a people is how they treat those who cannot fight back. Guards, let him finish. The voice came from the Korvathi delegation. High Merchant Voreth rose, his scaled face unreadable. The human is invoking the right of character. Under compact law, he may speak until he is done. The Empress's hands clenched on her throne. But the law was clear, and too many witnesses had heard. I bowed to High Merchant Voreth, then turned back to the assembly. I am nearly done. I wish only to say this. In 3 weeks, Princess Kaelith has shown me more wisdom, more insight, more genuine care for the well-being of all species than I have seen from any other diplomat in this compact. She is not your shame. She is your loss. And if you are too blind to see her worth, then Earth would be honored to receive her. The words hung in the air. I had just offered political asylum to a princess of the empire. It was unprecedented. It was outrageous. It was the only card I had left to play. The Empress stood frozen, caught between her desire for revenge and the diplomatic catastrophe of refusing. If she rejected my offer publicly, she admitted that Kaelith was too valuable to lose. If she accepted, she appeared to be discarding her own daughter. Kaelith stepped forward. Her voice was clear and steady, carrying through the chamber without effort. Mother, Dot. The Empress turned to face her daughter, and for the first time I saw something like uncertainty in her ancient eyes. For 3 years, you have tried to break me. You have shamed me, isolated me, stripped me of everything that matters. You have treated me as a lesson to others. This is the price of defiance. Kaelith's chin lifted. And I have endured it all, waiting for the day when you might see me as a daughter again instead of a cautionary tale. She walked toward the throne, and the crystal sang with every step. Not mournful now, but rising, strengthening. Becoming something, almost like a hymn. I no longer require your approval. I no longer seek your love. You have made clear that it was never truly on offer. What I require is my freedom. And if you will not grant it, then I accept the Terran ambassador's offer. I will go to Earth. I will build a life where courage is celebrated rather than punished. She stopped before her mother's throne. The choice is yours. The silence stretched for an eternity. Then, impossibly, the Empress laughed. It was not a cruel sound. It was something older, more complex, almost wondering. You really are your father's daughter, she said softly. He defied me exactly this way once. Before the war. Before everything changed. I know, Kaelith said. I found his letters. The Empress closed her eyes. When she opened them, something had shifted, not warmth, exactly, but perhaps the first crack in the ice. The court is adjourned, she said. All matters pertaining to Princess Kaelith's status will be reviewed by the Imperial Council. Ambassador Vance, you will remain as Earth's representative. It seems my daughter has found the ally she needed. Her lips twisted in something that was almost a smile. May the stars help us all. Later, in the crystalline gardens where the flowers sang instead of bloomed, Kaelith found me. She's still my mother, she said, settling beside me on the singing stone. This isn't a fairy tale ending. The council review could take years. She may still try to destroy us both. I know. You may have just made Earth a permanent enemy of the Empire. Possibly. She turned to look at me, her violet eyes searching my face. Was it worth it? Everything you risked? I thought about the question. I thought about Sarah, about Michael, about the 18 months of hollow existence since I lost them. I thought about the way the crystal walls sang differently when Kaelith and I were together. Not mournful anymore, but something new. Something that sounded almost like beginning. Ask me again in 60 years, I said. I intend to. She took my hand. It was improper. It was presumptuous. It was absolutely perfect. The crystal flowers around us shifted their song, weaving our frequencies together into a harmony that had never existed before. Human and Valorian, grief and hope, two broken souls finding in each other the courage to become whole. The Empire would call it scandal. History would call it diplomacy. I called it the first day of a life worth living. The end.